everyone. I'm Kendria. I need you to go like, follow, and subscribe. Soul Productions.
What's up, everyone? And this is Next Level Thinking. What's up, everyone? It's another episode of Next Level Thinking, where we always bring you inspired guests to help you take it to the next level. It's your host, Chris Holmes, as always, and I have a special guest by the name of
David Ellerstein.
Awesome. I'm glad to have you on the show. So let's go ahead and hit the roots. Tell the audience just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name's David Ellerstein, as I said, and I am an entrepreneur but for my entire adult life. Graduated college in the mid-'80s, went into telecommunications at the time, was working for MCI, did that for 5, 6, 7 years, became very knowledgeable in that space, technology, telecom, mobile payments, processing through my experience with MCI. Then I had the opportunity in 1992 to branch out on my own, and my business partner and I, a former MCI individual as well, we became MCI's largest independent agent at that point in time, building up a revenue base of hotels, operator services, calling cards of about $45 million with them. After that, we expanded into, in about 1997, to a product that was like 800 collect and 800 call ATT. And our product was 1-800-FairCall. We were the third largest collect calling company in the country, with contracts with all the major bell companies on over 1.6 million phones, doing about $35 million in revenue.
Awesome. That sounds like you had like a great amount of accomplishments and much more. So let me go a little bit more deeper into the roots of what actually happened to get you started into all of this, because entrepreneurship is more like of a trend nowadays, but there's always a story of the beginning and the origin. So like, what got you into this?
Yeah, so it really is interesting, and thanks for asking. So what really got me into this was, it goes back to my father, who unfortunately passed away in the past year, but he was my inspiration for becoming an entrepreneur. And the reason was, both my parents were extremely well educated, extremely well cultured. They brought us up in a really educated, cultured environment. And my father, who was a brilliant scientist, brilliant chemist, literally the smartest person I or anybody had ever met, he had the opportunity to go off on his own in the early 80s. By a marketing executive approached him and said, look, you can invent things, I can market and sell it. But my two brothers and I were about college age, about to enter college as such. And my dad was a big believer in the corporate world and the safety of a corporation. And he didn't take his chance. And he regretted it, because later on he found out how the big bad corporation, not that they're all bad, but that when he became near retirement, they were ready to put him out the pasture and didn't treat him as well as they treated him. So when this opportunity presented itself to me in 92, 93, I spoke to my wife at the time and I said, look, this is a great opportunity. I have to take the chance. My dad didn't take it. I don't want the regret. And so I took the leap.
Yep, and that's what it's all about, taking those chances, because anything when it comes to entrepreneurship, and I'm glad you hit on this, because traditionally, like a 9-to-5, a corporation, it builds the safety net. But when you go into the entrepreneurship, you're taking chances constantly on a daily basis to build an extreme amount of wealth, or generate your own revenue, and then create that financial freedom as well.
Agreed. It's the type of thing where, you are on your time. You have a lot of risk. There's a lot of chance, but it's somewhat planned risk. You can design it. They do say 95% of all small businesses fail in the first year. So there will be plenty of failures, but if you take your time and you plan it out and you have a good idea, this isn't a knee-jerk type of situation. You have to, at least from my perspective, it's never going to be me too. We'll see an opportunity, we'll see a business, and we'll see how can we make that better. It's going to be niche. It's not going to be, necessarily grandiose, but it's going to be a niche situation that we can make it unique, and we can make it saleable to the marketplace. Again, not me too is very critical for our way of thinking.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I want to really hit down on what you said previously about the niche marketing and much more. Because a lot of times, especially newer businesses, when they just start, they want to aim so broad, and that they're not really hitting their target, and they're wondering why sales are not, bringing in customers, and it's saying like, they get to this point in their own mind where it's like nothing's working. But you hit something very powerful, which is finding your niche, what makes you different and stick out from the rest of your competitors. So I want you to go a little bit more in detail about the importance of finding your niche and making yourself different.
Okay, so let me give you an example, because in the overview we didn't get to today. So I was in telecom, and I was in technology, and I was in payments processing, and if we leapt forward 15 years, I maintained it and helped build one of the largest prison communication calling businesses, of which I stepped away from in 2012. That's currently doing about 120 million in annual revenue. But that aside, then a crazy step forward. And too bad my father wasn't around to see it, because he was a scientist. Starting in 2016, I was called, and I had this aha moment by somebody that was in the fertilizer business for the cannabis industry. And I was very familiar with it. It's obviously a new industry. It's huge. It's exciting. Is there risk? Certainly, but it's less and less as more and more states are adopting it. But talking about niche, I was very familiar with it because I'd been in it in a payments way a couple years earlier, and I knew all the players that were out there, and there were a lot, but they were all just trying to sell a lot of product and a lot of SKUs, and they had, the big players out there have 50, 60 products. And I had a very unique partner who's been in this business since 1927. He's third generation. He's not that old, but third generation. And I said, I'm only willing to do this if we fine tune this, if we optimize this. We are not going to put out there what the marketplace has. We are going to put out, they all had either liquid, they all had either dry, again, upwards of 50 some products. And what we did is we put out a product that we have currently 12. It'll probably creep up to about 13 products in all. It's part liquid, it's part dry. There is overlap. So we really have about 9 total products that is completely optimized and is the best fertilizer in the industry. And I'm not spraining my arm, patting myself, or giving us any undue praise, but one thing we'll talk about probably later is education, staying ahead of the curve. Is I'm taking a course, and my dad would have been proud from the science perspective, but I'm taking a course, and the teacher that is teaching it, he's talking about the evolutionary nature of the business, and everything he's talking about what fertilizer and nutrient companies should do, we are already doing. So it's taking that niche, and again, not being me too, and making it better.
Awesome. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive into it now, because I'm a big believer on that as well. No matter what industry or business you're in, I feel like you should always continue to learn, invest into yourself, especially when it comes to knowledge. Because if anything, it's the knowledge that's going to really keep you reinventing yourself and getting that, that competitive edge, because you're thinking and being innovative of new ways you can do things and progress. Because once you stop learning, I feel that's when you stop growing.
Couldn't agree more. Just to add on to that a little bit, I'll hear many times, and it's a huge pet peeve of mine, and not that I have a lot, but I have one, and it's the if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I always go back. Yeah, I can't stand it, and I always go back to, and I believe it's attributed to George Bernard Shaw, but he's like, people that can't change their minds never change anything. And what I always tell people when they say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I go, if that's your line of thinking, then we wouldn't be talking right now, because we wouldn't be on cell phones, because AT&T controlled the market before MCI broke in to break up AT&T in 1986 or 84, whenever they did it. And there certainly wouldn't be any cannabis industry, because it would still be illegal. So change is necessary. Change is good. Innovation is everything.
I couldn't agree even more on that, because there was a point in time, and this is like a modern norm now, where people look at birds and they were like, there's no way in heck we'll be able to fly with them. And look now, You have planes that's constantly traveling back and forth, delivering millions and millions of people constantly on a daily basis. So it all comes back to just thinking outside the box, innovating and things like that, because you have to, keep reinnovating yourself to have that competitive edge. And if you really pay attention, like I think, like Walmart and HEB is like the perfect example, because I remember one time HEB came out with, I think they were the first ones, come out with curbside. And then not too long after that, Walmart came out with something similar. So, because they knew that if they didn't adjust, they would lose their customers. And we've seen this happen to previous franchises, like unfortunately, like Blockbuster or another one like Toys R Us and things like that.
I agree. I said you have to look out and see what's ahead, and you have to plan for ahead. But I'm a huge believer in always keep one eye on the rear view mirror. Know what's going on in the marketplace, have a pulse on the marketplace, see who might be coming upon you. Don't forget where you came from. Always remember where you came from. Don't get a little cliche, don't get too big for your britches, because the bigger you get, people are going to start coming for you. And so you just want to always remain humble.
And I'm really glad you pointed that out. And this one right here, I think is going to really hit home for a lot of people, because the more successful you get, especially when you bring in a lot more revenues, the bigger target you are. Like if even like a person like, let's say Will Smith got sued, you're very vulnerable to getting sued as well, because people will see you as an opportunity, and a lot of times people will try to take advantage of that.
Agreed. People see dollar signs. That's why there's patent trolls. That's why there's all sorts of, I mean, not that it's bad, but that's why there's personal injury attorneys. People see dollar signs, and people want to get rich quick. And that actually brings to another business philosophy that I tell people in the industry we're currently in. Everybody wants to do trials. Well, trials for a fertilizer in my industry, in any agriculture industry, is upwards of 4, 5, 6 months. I tell them I don't have enough time in my life to wait for every single trial to take place. But on the other hand, I tell everybody, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. We're patient. We know we have a good business. We know we have a great product. And we know that, once given the opportunity, you will see that, everything that we're espousing is coming to fruition. And, talking about fine tuning and not being me too, we're working with a current client who is going from the use of 15 products down to 7 of ours.
Wow.
And our 7 are providing more benefit than the 15 that they're using combined. And it's just a great product at a very fair value, because another pet peeve or something, or a hashtag that I'll say that I use is hashtag greed kills. And so, put a good business out there, a great product. And I even tell people, I'm fine if it's good for me and great for you. People will say it should be great for both of us. That's not necessarily always achievable. That might be a little bit of a relative term too. But, perception is reality. And as long as they think it's great, we're fine with that. And that's what we want to do. We just want to create a great, good, sound business. And I even tell people, if we do a really good business and we run it soundly, the money is going to be a byproduct. Don't worry about the money. That will come if we put together the right business and execute upon it properly.
Man, you right there, you just said a mouthful, because there's so many lessons and workshops that can be just taken off of that by itself. I'm trying to see which way I want to go with this one. I'll hit this one first. I like how you were putting it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And nowadays we live in a time and age of everybody wants everything quick. But I want to hear your insight is why you shouldn't be going for a sprint and the downfalls of all that.
Okay, well, so I agree. We have in our age of our phones, and you can even see the mess on the news, because everybody's now a news reporter trying to, get the fast breaking news, and it's the same thing. We with every phone we get, with every iPhone put out there, we get, our tolerance for speed is less and less and less, and it's kind of like with my kids. You have less patience for your own kids than you do for strangers. But the reason that it goes back to an old adage, haste makes waste. You don't want to just you just don't want to put product out there. And I tell my partner this all the time when we'll read about what somebody else is doing. He's like, maybe we should do this. And I'm like, no. And not that we speak that way, but I was saying, it's like, we're not going to be knee-jerk. This is science. And just because people have been doing this for the last 20, 25 years, that doesn't mean it's wrong, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the only way to do it. It's now all science-based, which I talk to people about trials when they want to do trials. I'm like, empirically, the science should speak for itself, but we're okay with a trial. But the point is not to be knee-jerk, to try and be as pragmatic as you can and try to make the best and right decisions as you go. Sure, there's going to be mistakes, and that's how you grow and that's how you learn, but you try to make the better decision. And rushing through it is never the way to do it. And even on like an important business decision, even if it sounds great, no matter what, it's an overnight. It's never, yes, I want to do it, even though my emotions might say bye, or whatever we want to do, sign the document. A very important decision is no matter what, it overnight, another review, take the emotion out of it. I'll even say, even in business practice, for example, writing emails, if you have a bad conversation or a text message, text is even worse, but because it's the emotions of the recipient. Mm-hmm. But it's when you write something, if it has emotion and it has anger in it, take a breath, wait till tomorrow, go and rewrite it. And all of a sudden, that message is going to be received much better because you're going to take all the anger out of it.
And I'm glad it's funny you mentioned that, because I did that not too long ago, where I had to stop myself and I took a breather and I looked at what I was writing. I was like, you know what? Instead of putting it like this, let me see what I can use this for to give it as value for others. So I took with the original content, what I was about to put, and I rephrased a lot of things to make it more of like a learning lesson so others can share and learn from it. So that is very important. Then it also kind of reminds me of one of the things my professor said when it came to emails and texts is be very cautious when you're doing this with emotion, because a lot of times your emotions get in front of you of what your really original intent was, and it can be confusing or misunderstood, because it goes back to also something you said way earlier when we were talking about people's perceptions of turns into their reality, and this goes to like the communication of text as well.
Yep, I agree. I mean, you stated it perfectly, and it's just true. And it's all about, going back to the original question about this, it's all about being patient, being pragmatic. Don't make a rushed or hurried decision, and don't be knee-jerk. I mean, you have to try and take the emotion out of it, no matter how big the opportunity is. I used to kid my partner back in the 90s. Whenever I would tell him some deal was coming in, he'd break out the calculator, and I'd say, let's not count the money. I'm not superstitious. Yeah, I'm not superstitious, but let's not count the money. Let's get the business. Again, the money will happen, but let's not figure out what we're buying next.
Yeah. So I want to go into this too, because I think you'll love this question. Tell the audience the importance of taking care of the customer and not putting so much focus onto the money, because I feel like a lot of times, especially when we live in the age where everything is so fast and people have insecurities, they try to get things fast and much more, when it should just focus on taking care of the customer, and like you were saying earlier, the rest will come. So can you go a little bit more in depth in that?
Sure. At least in part or some degree. The way I look at, and it's somebody asked me, hey, David, what's your best business trait? What do you think you're good at? And I was like, I'm relatively bright. I try to stay informed. I read every day. I learn. I wish I studied more chemistry in 10th grade and 11th grade, because I know a lot of chemistry now all of a sudden. But my best trait is being responsive. And that goes back to your customer question. And it's almost to the point of insanity, because the phones are always with us. And my rule of thumb with taking care of the customer is, no matter what, I respond within 24 hours. My DNA doesn't allow me to do otherwise. I'm just not wired otherwise. But I let them know. They always know that if they have a question, that they will get a response from me. And the thing is, I don't dodge it either. Whether it's good news or bad news, I might pad the bad news and soften the blow a little bit, But if I have bad, I let them know, because dodging that bad news only exacerbates it and makes the entire situation way worse. So they know that they're going to get a fair shake from David Ellerstein whenever they call, and they also know that they're going to get a response. They know that they're going to get the feedback and the answer that they need. And if it's not immediate, it's because I might have to do some research. I might have to do some background to make sure that I get the customer the best answer that they can get. And what I always say is, the customer doesn't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. And I always tell them, and people either don't believe me, or once they get to know me, they believe me, especially, this is, again, me personally, the way I conduct our business is, we will care as much about your business as you do. It's just the way I've always grown up. It's the way that I've always done things, and customers will begin to realize that. And it doesn't matter if you're the customer that's doing $500 a month in business with us or $50,000 a month in business with us. If you come to us and you need something and you have a question and you need us to do some research, we will get you that answer. You're not put on the back burner. It's just the only way we know how to operate. As an entrepreneur, your reputation is all you have. And so you just have to keep maintaining that.
Well said, and I think that's a great way to close everything out. So with that said, where can the audience find you at?
So you can find me at www.plantlifeco.com. That's www.plantlifeco.com. Or you can email me directly, david@plantlifeco.com, with any business questions or nutrient questions you may have. Either way, I will respond.
Awesome. I want to thank you for taking out your time to drop all those great jewels and information. I took a good amount of notes myself. I'm learning something new every time I interview something. I definitely learn an amount of great things from you. I want to thank you for that. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and close this out. It's your host, Chris Holmes, as always, bringing you great guests. And my guest for today is by the name of
David Ellerstein.
Awesome. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share with your friends and others, and let's help others take it to the next level. Peace.